Eight-Step Framework to Problem Solving from McKinsey by Il- Iliana Stereva, May 7, 2018. Solving problem. Do you know what pre-wiring is? By the time you finish reading this post, you will. I recently read the McKinsey Mind, which is great, quick book that offer a simple problem-solving framework and quite a few consulting techniques proven and tested by McKinsey and its people. Well, we all know McKinsey, so I think we can trust their expertise, which is why I want to share with you my learning from the book. Some of them are simple, but we don't implement them enough. Others are very clever tips that can help us not just in consulting, but also with stakeholder management and buy-in or teamwork. Before I get to the tips, here is the model that McKinsey uses for problem solving with clients. Business need, managing, leadership, implementation, presenting, analyze. The McKinsey Mind book cover analyzing, presenting, and managing problem. Analyzing, presenting, and managing problem. I took a ton of Kindle notes while reading it, and upon reviewing them, I put together the below 8-step framework, which is a much simpler, simplified, and shorter version than what the book offers. Okay, 8 step to problem solving from McKinsey. The first, solve at the first meeting with a hypothesis. Second, intuition is as important as a fact. Third, do your research. Do your research, but don't reinvent the wheel. Fourth, tell the story behind the data. 5. Pre-wire. 6. Start the conclusion. 7. Hit singles. 8. Respect your time. First, solve the first meeting with a hypothesis. The McKinsey problem-solving process begins with the use of structure framework to generate fact-based hypotheses, followed by data gathering and analysis to prove or disprove the hypothesis. Gut feeling at this stage is extremely important because we don't have many facts yet. However, structure strengthen your thinking and ensure that your ideas will stand up. Typically, the problem solving process will involve defining the boundaries of the problem and then breaking it down into its component elements. The concept of MACA, pronoun me, see, an acronym for mutually exclusive, collective, exhaustive, is the basic tenet of the McKinsey thought process. Being messy in the context of problem solving means separating your problem into distinct, non-overlapping issues while making sure that no issue relevant to your problem have been overlooked. This allows to simplify the problem and plan the work because in most cases, a complex problem can be reduced to a group of smaller, simple problems that can be solved individually. The most common tools McKinsey people use to break problem apart is the logic tree. Having reduced the problem to its essential components, you are ready to embark on the next step, which is framing, forming a hypothesis as to its likely solution. By already knowing where your solution is, you eliminate a lot of paths that lead to dead end. Using an initial hypothesis to guide your research and analysis will increase your both the efficiency and effectiveness of your decision making because it provides you and your team with a problem solving roadmap that will lead you to ask the right question and perform the correct analysis to get to your answer. A good hypothesis will also save your time by pointing out potential blind alley much more quickly and allowing you to get back to the main issue if you do go down the wrong path. Second, intuition is as important as fact. Since you should form your hypothesis at the start of the problem solving process, you have to rely less on facts. You don't have done most of your fact gathering yet, and more on instinct or intuition. Take what you know about the problem at hand, combine it with your gut feeling on the issue, and think about what the most likely answers are. Executives make major strategic decisions based as much on gut instinct as on fact based analysis. Intuition and data complement each other. Intuition and data complement each other. You need at least some of each. You need at least some of each to have a solid basis for your decisions. The key to striking the balance is the quality over quantity. Third, do your do your research but do not reinvent the wheel. When you form an initial hypothesis, you are solving problem at the first meeting. Unfortunately, 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 although you may thinking you have the answer, you have to prove it through fact-based analysis. Your next step is to figure out which analysis you have to perform and which question you have to ask in order to prove or disprove your hypothesis. When your time and resources are limited, you don't have the luxury of being able to examine every single factor in detail. Instead, when planning your analysis, figure out which factor most affect the problem and focus on those. Drill down to core of the problem instead of picking apart each and every piece. In most situations, achieving a scientific level of exactitude for your management decision is counterproductive. Hmm. That's why, also, as one of your first step in designing your analysis, you should figure out what not to do. As your next step, you should decide which analyses are quick wins, easy to complete, and likely to make major contribution to proving or refuting the initial hypothesis. Using 80 or slash 20 rule. When doing your research, you don't want to get as much information as possible. You want to get the most important information as quickly as possible. With a plan of action for what to research, make sure you don't reinvent the wheel as you start gathering your data. Whatever problem you are facing, chances are that someone somewhere has worked on something similar. So, your next step here is to look through all possible internal documents and then look externally. Tell the story behind the data. Once you have your analysis finished, you need to interpret it because number or data do not say anything. You have to figure out the story behind and the message that you want to communicate. At this stage, first come the process of understanding the data, piecing together in your own mind or within your team the story the data is telling you, the step you should take based on the story. Second comes assembling your finding into an externally directed end product, a key message that includes a course of action for your organization, team, or client. Your interpretation of the data leads to a story. That is what you think the data means. You select those portions of the story that you believe your audience need to know in order to understand your conclusion, along with the supporting evidence, and you put them together into your end product as in your presentation. To succeed here, you need to see through your client's executive or audience lens and speak their language. Pre-wire. The key to successful presentation and getting buy-in in order for your audience to accept your recommendation is pre-wiring. The reason behind this is because to get buy-in, you need to bridge the information and trust gap between you and your audience. The information gaps, the information gap exists because you don't know more about your finding than your audience does. Depending on the relationship between you and your audience, the trust gap, it if it exists, could take any several forms. Your audience may think that you are too inexperienced to comment on their businesses, or they may mistrust you because you are an outsider, overeducated, or not educated enough. In its essence, pre-wiring means taking your audience through your finding before you give your presentation. This allows for people to trust you, ask questions you might not have thought about to avoid surprises, and then during the presentation, say yes and support you among others who may be more skeptical. Pre-wire everything. A good business, a good business's presentation should contain no shocking revelation for the audience. Work the relevant decision maker in your organization through your finding before you gather them together for a dog and a pony show. At minimum, you should send out your recommendation via email to request comment from key decision maker before the presentation if you can meet the with those people face to face. And earlier you can start the pre-wiring process, the better, by identifying and getting input from the relevant player early on. You allow them to put their own mark on your solutions, which will make them more comfortable with it and give them a stake in the outcome. The start with conclusion. When you begin presentation in front of your desired audience, make sure you start with the conclusion. Having your conclusion or recommendation up front is sometimes known as inductive reasoning. Simply put, inductive reasoning takes the form we believe X because of reason A, B, C. This contrasts with deductive reasoning, which can run along the line of A is true, B is true, C is true, therefore we believe X. Even this, the simplest and the most abstract example, it obvious that inductive reasoning gets to the point a lot more quickly, takes less time to read, and pack a lot more punch. As untraditional advantages, advantage. Starting with your conclusion allow you to control how far you go into detail in your presentation. You need to explain clearly within just 30 seconds, almost like an elevator pitch. If you can pass the elevator pitch, then you understand what you are doing well enough to sell your solution. The solution presentation bridges the gap between you, the presenter, and your audience. It lets them know what you know. It also keeps it simple for them, which is why it is important to stick to a key rule if you are using a deck. One message per slide or chart, no more. The more complex a chart or slide becomes, the less effective it is at conveying information. The meaning should be immediately obvious to the reader, so use whatever tools you need to bring it out. If you broke out your initial hypothesis into McKinsey, set of issue and sub-issue and suitable modify them according to the result of your analysis. Then you have ready made outline for your representation that will support your conclusion. Remember that you have 2 years and 1 month, only 1 month. It is not just what you say, it is how you say it. Over communication is better than under communication, which is why pre-wiring, as mentioned above, is so important. Finally, if you are proposing a certain solution in which you will be involved for the execution, make sure you do not promise because you are bound to under-deliver. Instead, balance the demands for the solution with your capability and those of your team. If more work is necessary, you can always start a second project once and the first is done. Once the first is done. Hit singles. When you begin executing on the solution, aim to hit singles. This is a metaphor from baseballs. Not you cannot do everything, so don't try. Just do what you are supposed to do and get it right. It is impossible to do everything yourself all the time. If you do manage that feat once, you raise unrealistic expectations from those around you. Then, when you fail to meet those expectations, you will have difficulty regaining your credibility. Getting on base consistency is much better. Getting on base consistency is much better than trying to hit home run mm, and striking out the 9 times out of the 10. Do few things well rather than a ton of mediocre execution or results. Stick to target focus rather than perfection and drilling into every little piece, quality over quantity. And when there is a lot of work to be done, delegate around your limitation. Know them for what they are and respect them. And the last, 8, respect your times. Don't forget that work is like a gas. It expands to fill the time available. As in the previous point, share the load by delegating and also perform sanity check on the way to allow you to take a step back and look at the big picture. You will also have to get others to respect your time. Better you are at your job, or the higher up you go in your organization, the more everyone wants a piece of you. There is an old saying, stress is feeling you get when your gut say no and your mouth say yes. I would glad to. You have to train your mouth to say no. Once you make a commitment, I won't work on the weekend or I will cook dinner 3 nights a week. Stick to it. Bearing life and death emergency. If you seem to be having life and death emergency every week and you are not dealing with the matter of real life and death, as in a trauma ward, take a hard look at your priorities. Which is of which of these steps stuck out most at you and why? Here is detailed project management framework that allow you to execute on solution if you are looking for one. This post was originally published on my blog www.ilianastareva.com. Thank you.